year 1240, in Tuscany, Italy, Arnolfo di Cambio was born. Little is known about his earlier life. What is known is that he learned how to be a sculptor from the renowned sculptor Nicola Pisano, famous for the pulpits of the cathedral in Siena, which di Cambio assisted him with. Pisano was taught in the Romanesque style, but he favored the Gothic style more, which would ensure that di Cambio would learn and develop his style in favor of the Gothic style rather than the Romanesque. He also studied painting. He was taught by Cimabue, who was a pre-Renaissance painter. Another one of Cimabue's students was Giotto, who would go on to become a famous Renaissance painter. Cimabue made a painting known as the Madonna Enthroned, which was a tempera on wood. This artwork most likely influenced how di Cambio would make his own Madonna. The Madonna. Here in the Museo dell'Opera del Duomo rests the Madonna and Child, sculpted by Arnolfo di Cambio. This sculpture portrays Mary, the Mother of Christ, along with the Christ Child, who is seated on her lap, holding a scroll in place. Constructed in the year 1310, this sculpture stands at 173 centimeters, or about 5 foot and 8 inches. It is made entirely out of marble and is in the round. Moving to the aesthetics of this sculpture, we can see that di Cambio, like many other sculptors of the time, gave great detail to the way Mary's clothes are draped over her, showing the depth of the folding. Mary is wearing a bracelet and a crown to represent her queenship of heaven. The faces of both Mary and the Christ Child are blocky. We can get a sense of this at looking at the Christ Child from the side. When looking at this sculpture, we can see some influence from Cimabue's Madonna. In both works of art, Mary has her cloak covering the top of her head. The Christ Child is holding a scroll and is also making the hand gesture for Christ. When comparing and contrasting Cimabue's Madonna Enthroned with di Cambio's Madonna, we can see some similarities as stated before, but also some differences. In di Cambio's Madonna, we see Mary is wearing a crown and a bracelets for her queenship. However, in Cimabue's Madonna, Mary is not portrayed with a crown nor a bracelet, but is instead portrayed with a halo. In di Cambio's Madonna, Mary is just wearing a heavy cloak. We cannot see beneath this cloak to see what kind of clothing she is wearing. However, in Cimabue's, we can see a layer of clothing beneath her heavy cloak. The Christ Child is portrayed in the Cimabue's as with a halo, a cross halo. However, in di Cambio's, the Christ Child is not portrayed with a crown nor a cross halo. As stated before, the Christ Child is making the hand gesture for Christ, and both are holding a scroll. There are differences here though. Cimabue's Christ Child is holding it firmly in his hands, while di Cambio's Christ Child is having the scroll rest against his body. We can compare di Cambio's Madonna with another Madonna that was made a few decades earlier in France, the Madonna at Rheims Cathedral. The posture of the sculptures are different. Di Cambio's Madonna is seated, while the Madonna at Rheims is standing. Di Cambio's Madonna is made out of marble, while the Madonna at Rheims is made out of limestone. Di Cambio's Christ Child is holding a scroll in place and is making the Christogram hand gesture, the hand gesture for Christ, while in both cases, the Christ Child at Rheims is not. Di Cambio's Madonna, as stated before, is more shrouded, preventing us from seeing any clothing she is wearing beneath it, while the Madonna at Ras has her underclothing exposed, allowing us to see a lighter material of clothing beneath her heavy cloak. In Di Cambio's Madonna, Mary's head is covered by her cloak, while the Mary at Ras has her head entirely exposed. As we saw before, the faces of both Mary and the Christ child of Di Cambio's were blocky. However, at Ras, Mary and the Christ child have rounded faces instead. The crown Mary is wearing in each sculpture is different. In Di Cambio's, Mary is wearing a smaller crown that is detailed, and it shows pearls set in the crown running across the upper rim, while on the bottom half, jewels are set in running across. The Madonna at Ras wears a much larger crown. The crown does not have as many jewels on it, but instead has stars on its rim and is much more in depth than Di Cambio's. Let us finally compare Di Cambio's Mary with another Mary. However, this Mary was made during the Romanesque period, while Di Cambio's was made during the High Gothic period. As we see in this picture of the Romanesque Mary, we see that the Christ child is similar to Di Cambio's. Both are making the Christogram hand gesture, as we said before, the hand gesture for Christ, and both are holding some instrument that is used to take down notes, a book or a scroll. The Christ child for the Romanesque Madonna is looking at the audience, while Di Cambio's Christ child is looking away in a different direction. The Romanesque Mary, we can see, has her underclothing exposed, so we can see what kind of clothing she wears beneath that heavy cloak, while Di Cambio's is shrouded, as stated before. In both Di Cambio's and the Romanesque Mary, we can see that there are pupils in both cases. However, the Romanesque Mary, it appears that the pupils were painted and have faded away due to time. The crown Mary wears in both are different. As stated before, Di Cambio's Mary has a small crown with pearls set in that run across the top rim, a large central jewel in the center, and jewels that are set in on the bottom half. The Romanesque Mary, however, wears a larger crown, smaller than the Madonna at Ras, but larger than Di Cambio's. There are, as it appears, jewels set in on the bottom half, while there is some detail to the upper half of her crown. In both cases as well, Mary's cloak is covering the top of her head. And finally, the material that these sculptures are made out of are different. It appears that the Romanesque Mary is also made out of limestone or a similar material, while Di Cambio's Mary, as stated before, is made out of marble. We have just viewed 4 different versions of the Madonna enthroned. We first saw Di Cambio's own Madonna. We then compared Di Cambio's Madonna with that of Cimabue's Madonna enthroned. We next compared Di Cambio's Madonna to the Madonna at Ras Cathedral. We finally compared Di Cambio's Madonna to that of a Romanesque version of the Madonna. As we saw, there were similarities and differences between Di Cambio's and that of the other 3. We can see then that these versions did influence how Di Cambio made his own Madonna. However, Di Cambio set himself apart from that with his own style by making faces blocky instead of rounded faces. And covering Maria's head was a choice he decided to make, influenced by Cimabue, and possibly with that of the Romanesque Madonna. We can firmly state that Di Cambio made his own style present in the High Gothic period.